Just going to talk about one team in the East that missed out, and that is my Buffalo Sabres. Obviously, it was, an uphill battle. The odds were kind of stacked against them. If I have this correct, and please, forgive me if I don't, but basically they needed to win their 3 remaining games, and one of Florida, the Islanders, or Pittsburgh needed to lose all 3 of their remaining games. I think I've got that right.
I think the only thing that I would add to that is I think the Panthers were already clinched at the time. So I think it was just between the Islanders and the Penguins. Right. One of them had to lose out, and then Buffalo had to win out. And you know what? They came close. Pittsburgh did lose to Chicago last night, as we saw, which is just unacceptable. And if we recorded this episode in a couple days from now, we would be talking about 4 teams, and one of them would be either the Islanders or the Penguins, because one of them has to miss. There's a lot of good teams in the East, but because we're recording it today, Buffalo's the team that just missed out, and only by a couple points.
Yeah, exactly. So 87 points, obviously a huge improvement for this team this year. 7-2-1 in their last 10 games down the stretch, and a heartbreaking loss to the New Jersey Devils on Tuesday night. So Buffalo out of playoff contention, but man, looking at this team and the youth, you look at it as just a really positive growth year for this team, and next year they have to make the playoffs. I mean, being in it right here in April towards the bitter end, it's kind of exciting that for the first time in a long time, the Sabres have expectations now, and the expectation is that they will make the playoffs next season. You saw what Devin Levi was able to come in and do for this team, and just so impressive that a 21-year-old kid just coming out of college was able to come in and play important games down the stretch for this hockey team. So really happy for my Sabres. Chad obviously would have loved to see them get in, but I think the fact that they were playing meaningful games all the way up to game 80 in the season here in April, I think that's a real credit to Don Granato and the rest of the organization and the players for getting to this point, and we certainly didn't expect it. I don't think so. Job well done, and really looking forward to this team next year, man, and for years to come. Like, you see the direction they're going in, and it's just going to keep getting better from here.
For sure. The only problem with where the Sabres are right now is that the Atlantic and the East in general is just so tight. And there are a lot of good teams at the top especially. So I look at the Atlantic and, looking forward to next season, I think to myself, okay, Boston might get a little bit worse. They're probably not going to be President's Trophy winners by a country mile again next season. And if they are, clip this and that would be great. But they're probably not going anywhere. Toronto is keeping all their guys together. They're probably not going anywhere. Tampa, same group, probably not going anywhere. Florida had a bit of a rocky start to this season, but have been really good down the stretch. I think they've figured out how to play with the new pieces that they have, and won't be losing a ton of players next season. Their core is set. And then, you've got your Buffaloes, Montreals, Ottawas, and Detroits, who are all kind of right there. I think of those 4, Buffalo and Ottawa have kind of separated themselves a little bit, which is nice to see. And we could have easily talked about Ottawa this episode as well, because I think, they were in the hunt for quite a bit, and they had an expectation of maybe making the playoffs this year as well. But, man, you've got 6 really good competitive teams now in the Atlantic. And then going over to the Metro, who's getting worse there? Is next year finally the year where both Pittsburgh and Washington start their rebuilds? I guess Washington kind of did this season, but Pitt was right in it. And I mean, at the time of recording now, are currently still in it and could make the playoffs. So just who knows, man. That's why it's tough to place expectations on teams in these divisions, because the East is just wild right now. And I was looking earlier today, the top 4 teams and almost the top 5 teams, because the Rangers, I believe, are 1 point back of Vegas. But the top 4 teams in the East would have won the Western Conference if they were in that conference in terms of points right now. Like, that's how stacked the Eastern Conference is, and top heavy as well. So all of that said, I look at the Sabres and I think, yes, this is a team who could make the playoffs next year, and I really hope they do, just for your sake and for entertainment's sake, to end that league-long drought and to get Jeff Skinner into some playoff games as well. But man, just aside from all that, let's just appreciate how good this season was for this team.
Absolutely.
You've got 3 players, 4 technically, who are kind of in and around a point per game. Tage and Tuck are both above a point per game. Then you've got Skinner and Dahlin hovering right around that, which is just incredible. Dahlin had an absolute breakout year this year, and I'm just so happy for the guy. He's one of my favorite defensemen in the league. And then some really good secondary scoring is finally starting to come through for this team. You've got Dylan Cousins quietly having almost 70 points this year. And Casey Middlestad, too, quietly almost 60 points this year. I think he's sitting at 55 or so. Yeah. So, just looking up and down this roster up front, that is, a lot of really good pieces already, and guys coming, like Peterka, for example, is one of the guys in the wings. So up front, they're looking really good going forward. On the back end, first full season for Owen Power. That's great. He's only going to get better. So, to me, this team is in a great spot. But as we mentioned, goaltending is key, and they have to figure that out. Whether it's going to be Devin Levi, whether it's going to be UPL. It sounds like it's probably not going to be UPL. Rumors that we've heard that they don't love his game, the style that he plays. But if they figure out goaltending and can string together some wins that way and get a few steals, have a few games stolen from your goaltender, then I could easily see them being in a playoff spot next season. But like I said, let's just enjoy where they are right now. Such a great year, a great last 10 games down the stretch, and it's just exciting to be a Sabres fan for you. It must be.
It really is, man. I haven't felt this good about this team in such a long time, and we've obviously talked about it in different pockets of the year. But yeah, just to be able to do this episode and still be talking about them, and the fact that they just missed out is really positive. So a really great year for growth. I couldn't be happier. It's only going to get better. Kyle Oposo said it best, man, that they, he felt that they really became a team this year, and it's just the culture is finally right there for the first time in a long time. 2 things really that they have to figure out in terms of what's next that Kevin Adams is going to have to make some decisions on this summer. You've got too many goaltenders, as we mentioned. I think this is probably it for Craig Anderson, although would love to have him back in some role in the organization, just because I think he's been fantastic. But with his age, the miles he's put on his body, I think this is pretty much it. He was only playing once a week down the stretch. Eric Comrie still has another year on his deal, so we'll see with him. Do they move on from him, even though he's got a year left? And then UPL, still a young kid, a big kid as well, but we've seen reports, like you said, that they don't particularly love his game, and we've seen it before with him. Kind of, it's up and down. It looks like he's coming and he's going to be the guy, and then not so much. He's not quite ready. So if I were a betting man, I would say that it's going to be Levi and someone else, that they could very well go out and get someone else and, make a deal to send UPL elsewhere, or Comrie or whoever. And then I think that, it would benefit to add another defenseman as well. I think that, they had a lot of trouble defending in their own end this season at a lot of times. 3 young guys, left shot D, and Dahlin, Samuelson, and Owen Power, that put on a lot, that they were riding pretty heavy all year long. So maybe getting another veteran defenseman back there could really help them out. But up front, no question, this team has a lot of offensive talent, can score goals, and but all in all, just really excited about this team moving forward, man. A really, really positive year. I couldn't be any happier.
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe even this offseason is the year or the time that we see Buffalo go out and maybe try to land, a top pair defenseman, on the same kind of caliber as, these players don't come around often. But I'm just thinking about, teams who have done it in the past, and Dougie Hamilton comes to mind, right? In New Jersey. Like, that was a guy who, that was a statement from the Devils saying, okay, we're ready to compete now. So maybe the Sabres do something similar and it transforms their team, similar to what Hamilton did in New Jersey. So a lot to think about there, a lot of tough decisions coming up for this team in the offseason. If it were me, if I were the GM, I think I would bring in Levi as their third goalie to start. I would pencil him in as number 3 next year because, like I said, I think there's a lot of value in that, in having a guy who is waiver exempt, who can go up and down to the minors, and, who is also good and going to be pushing your other 2 goalies as well. So I don't know who I like better between Comrie and UPL. I think it's probably UPL. Comrie didn't look great this year, but I mean, it's an experiment. You never know. You only have so many numbers to go off of, and it was just one that didn't work out. It happens all the time. It happened in Toronto with Peter Mrazek. So, it just is what it is. So I could see some shuffling of the goaltenders next year, adding a defenseman. But all in all, just this team is getting ready to compete next year. And looking forward to next season, how fun would it be if the Leafs can play the Sabres in the first round?
Oh, well,
it's a possibility.
We'd be going, that's for sure. Whether it's Toronto or Buffalo, probably Buffalo because it'd be a lot cheaper, I think. But we'd be going for sure. And again, just the last thing. Really nice to see a game this year finally with you and Case and of course our good buddy John Kiriakou and Skyler as well. But late in the season, down the stretch when it actually mattered, it would have been great to just go see a game, but for the game to actually matter down the stretch and for them to get the win as well when we were there, that was really cool. So, yeah, exciting things to come for this team, and